Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Design Recharge. I'm your host, Diane Gibbs, and this is episode 281. And I am joined by somebody who I think is a great way to start off the new year, somebody who I think has really chased her dream, and she really made it. And I'm super excited to have Britt Davis on. I'm going to let Britt kind of give us a little bit of her background, but just so you guys know, she didn't even play sports as a kid. I can't wait. But she wanted to do sports and entertainment. And she now is the senior graphic designer at AMB Sports and Entertainment, which covers the Falcons, covers the professional soccer team in Atlanta, and a whole bunch of other things. So it's in-house. She has an in-house job. She worked at we're going to get into this, but she worked at a university doing some of their sports stuff as well and kind of fell in love. She has a love for nostalgia. So if you like these things and you have a dream, and just so you know, it's very male dominated, the field in design, at least a lot of times, sports design has a lot of men, which we love men, we're glad, but it's good to have women represented and then also a minority. So I'm excited for you to kind of share your story, because I think you really are blazing a trail. A lot of my students are African American, and a lot of my students are first year or first time, their first person in their family going to college. So I really feel like it's really important to give all examples. I mean, I would say 80 to 90% of the students that I teach are women. And so it's just really good to see women in leadership. And I'm excited to talk to you about your whole journey. So thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Super long, really drawn out intro. So sorry about that. So the nostalgia, Amy's saying, the love nostalgia, even from eras before my time. Absolutely. So you also have this love for nostalgia, and maybe people don't know, but you did industrial design in your undergrad. Kind of take us through your background a little bit so that they get a better idea of paint the picture. Because I actually think that ends up being a superpower for you.
So I grew up in a really artsy, creative town, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's about an hour outside of Charlotte, hour and a half outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. So I was always surrounded by the arts, and even within my family, on my mom's side and my dad's side, a lot of creative people, a lot of artists, musicians, crafters. So it was something that was always present. And my parents, they did a really good job as far as helping me gauge that interest. So even if they weren't necessarily the ones painting and drawing, they kind of connected me with people who were. So even in elementary school, middle school, all throughout high school, definitely going into college, they connected me with the right people to kind of help me understand what the industry was about, so that I knew what it was going in. So that's kind of how I got into looking at industrial design, graphic design. I did mostly fine arts in high school, so I did a lot of painting and drawing. But I wanted to do something a little bit more. I wanted to do something a little different outside of just painting and drawing, because I really didn't know where that was going to take me. So my parents enrolled me in a summer camp at NC State, design camp. So I was able to stay on campus.
What year? Like, how old were you?
So that was going into my junior year of high school. So I went up there for a week. My mom and my stepdad just drove me up there, and basically you get to stay on campus for the whole week, and you get to go through each program that's offered. And so while I was there, that's kind of where I met one of my first mentors, Clavon Lowe. He was in the industrial design program, and he kind of took me under his wing. He was actually getting ready to graduate, I think, that year that I would be coming in. And my older cousin, Shanthony, was in the graphic design department there. I think she had graduated 2 years before I got there. So I already had kind of some foundation before I was going in, and kind of knew some people that connected me with the associate dean, Marva Motley, and some of the professors I got to meet, and, just get everything I needed so that when I did my review, I kind of know exactly what I need to put in my portfolio, so that I'd have pretty much a sure way knowing that I was going to get in. Because
Did you have to do a review to get in freshman year?
Yeah, so you apply to NC State and then you put which college you want to go to. And so you put College of Design, then they review your application, your grades, GPA, SAT, all that stuff. And then based on that, they'll decide if you can get an actual interview. You get your interview, you go up, you present, I think, 10 to 12 pieces. And that's where my cousin Shanthony kind of really came in and helped me figure out how you format your portfolio, what's the best way to do it, what type of projects they're looking for, what kind of questions they're going to ask you. So I made it to that process. And I knew going in that I wanted to do industrial design
Which is also a very male-dominated field.
It is, and it was when I was there. I think maybe at the time, the College of Design, there were definitely a handful of women in the program. But it was actually one of the smaller programs in the College of Design anyway. So, we had architecture, graphic design, art and design, landscape architecture. But I think industrial design was at the time, one of the smaller ones. But I loved the program. And I got insight with that through my art teacher, my high school art teacher, Matt Fussell. He just noticed that in my sketchbook, I like to draw things that I would take apart. I like to put things back together. I loved building with Lego when I was little, even still now. I still have them all over my office. But he was like, industrial design will probably be something, that you really like. So that's how I kind of knew going in that, I want to do industrial design. And so that's how I kind of built out my portfolio.
So you sometimes, and maybe this is showing my age because I believe I'm a good bit older than you, but my parents had no idea what graphic design was. They definitely wouldn't have known what industrial design was. They knew what landscape architecture was,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's what my major was going to be at Auburn. And so it's because we didn't have a name for it. But if you looked at back of what I was doing, even in fourth grade, I was making my own catalogs. I mean,
yeah, and that's where it usually starts. I mean, I think for me, when it came to, I had industrial design, I had graphic design, and I had fine arts. With fine arts, I knew it was no painting. I was going to do portraits. I kind of got into architecture a little bit. I think that's what my parents initially would have liked for me to do because it's cool to say, you're an architect. And I think that was the one they were most familiar with because we have family friends who are architects, so they could actually, get me connected to the right people. But when I kind of started bringing up graphic design and industrial design, they're like, let's find a program we can kind of place her in, so we might not know what it is, but we can, find some people. So even through just friends and family at church, when I would say I want to do graphic design, they'd say, hey, do my logo or do my business cards. And I think my mom had got me a copy of Corel Draw. I don't even know what edition it was, but I could do all different things with it. This is before I even had Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign. And she got me this disc and loaded it on my computer. And I haven't looked back since, except I don't use Corel Draw anymore. But
thank goodness we'd have to end this conversation right here. I'm just kidding. I've had Fabio on, and that's all he used, but he's converted now.
Yeah.
So, so you go through the NC State program in industrial design, and then you get a job. What job did you get?
So when I graduated, backing up a little bit, I got a job on campus my senior year at NC State with
working part-time?
Part-time as a campus activities board. So basically it's the department or the on-campus organization responsible for planning all our events. So concerts, just little activities for us to have on the weekends, during the day, free food, t-shirt giveaways, all that good stuff. So I was one of the publicity chairs. So my job was to design all our posters, all our t-shirts. And so they took us to Vanderbilt University for a conference called ACUI. And it's like the College Unions International Conference. So all these different college unions get together and they do a regional conference. So we went to the one in Tennessee, and they have a competition for the designers, a student and a professional level. And I entered a bunch of stuff, got some recognition, and connected with some folks at UNC Charlotte while I was there. And it was just good exposure for my work, and kind of knowing that if this is something I wanted to do afterwards, you know, I could. Even though I was doing industrial design, it was kind of hard to get the job that I wanted. Like I wanted to work at Nike doing a soft product design, like sneakers and bags. But getting in at the door at Nike can be really tough. So
Right.
I wanted to kind of have a backup. So my parents were saying, you know, well, you know, just be open. You know, you can stay local. You can go here. You can go there, but just kind of be open. So after that conference, it kind of opened my mind to, well, I could do graphic design specifically for universities because I have this portfolio built around that. And during winter break, I just kind of did a lot of sending my application out, internships, full-time jobs, and taking all the work that I'd done at NC State and applying for a couple of jobs at different universities. And UNC Charlotte was hiring. They were actually in the process of building their new student union and kind of building up this new department around the student union. So I was able to apply there, got an interview, and they actually called me the last day of my internship in Raleigh to offer me the job. So I graduated Saturday, May 9th, and I started work like a week later.
Whoa, that's incredible.
It was perfect time. My mom and grandma, they drove me down to Charlotte, found an apartment, stayed with some family until my apartment was ready, and I got to work. So it was like graduation, move, start a job, boom, and it's been going.
It was perfect timing, right?
Yep.
So just so people who aren't as familiar with North Carolina, Durham, Raleigh, Charlotte, or Chapel Hill, Raleigh, Durham is kind of in one kind of area called
the triangle.
Right, triangle, right. So then Charlotte is closer.
It's closer to South Carolina. So it's Charlotte is about 2.5 hours from Raleigh. Still in the triad, so still in like the middle part of North Carolina, but just on the other end of the triad. So I went from Winston to Raleigh, then to Charlotte. And I was in Charlotte for 6 years. Yeah, 6 years. And it was my first job out of college. I mean, it was probably I couldn't have asked for a better first job. I mean, I was able to grow there. You know, they supported, you know, education, so I was able to go back to school. So I enrolled at UNC Charlotte for a graduate program, took classes in communication studies and business. You know, started the MBA program. It was cool, but it wasn't really my thing. So instead of declaring an actual master's in that, I said I'm gonna, you know, keep working, but I'm gonna apply for my master's and go to graduate school for MFA in graphic design. So that's when I got to SCAD.
So what year was that in the process of working?
I started SCAD in 2012.
And you graduated in
2015. So and I was going full time, but I was only doing 2 classes at a time. So grad school for SCAD is 2 classes considered full time, and then I was working full time too. Had just bought a house and like all this crazy stuff was going on. So it was madness, but it was totally worth it.
What year did you graduate undergrad?
Undergrad, I graduated 2009.
Okay, so really you're talking, you made some decisions quickly, which I think some people, especially now here at the beginning of the year, they're like thinking about things. Were these decisions that you had long term because you were like, okay, I started this new job. I see, you know, I see what it entails, but I also know, like, how far into your job did you start taking classes for the MBA or whatever?
I had started classes within probably a year and a half of starting my job at UNC Charlotte because, I mean, they offered tuition waivers. So it's like, you might as well, even if you're not declaring a minor. It's just good to stay fresh because I knew eventually I was going to go for a master's. So I wanted something just to kind of keep my mind fresh. So I knew going in that, you know, within a year or so I was going to go back to school. It just took me a little bit longer to declare what I wanted to actually do, but I had been taking classes. Like as of 2015, I had been in school since kindergarten, like nonstop. So it was like boom, 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 boom. But my initial goal with the master's was, you know, working in higher education. Pretty much everybody I worked with at some level had either a master's or a doctorate.
Mm.
So it's like, well, I'm a designer, but I could still, go for that. And, I really want to teach, at the university level one day, or just have that extra experience and kind of bridge that gap of, I still want to do graphic design. There's still a lot I need to kind of understand. Let me fill it with the master. So that was kind of my main reason for going back. And once I kind of decided that not only do I want to teach, but I kind of want to start to specialize in sports design, I can kind of use this master's as an opportunity to research and figure out all of what I need to do for this area of design. It's like when you first see sports design, we see the Photoshop, the composites, all this stuff is really cool, but I wanted to try to tap in a little bit deeper, especially on the branding side. And that's something that I didn't have that experience with from school because, I was doing industrial. So I knew the research component of it, but graphic design, can be a whole nother beast, especially when it comes to copywriting and all these other things that I had not done as much undergrad. So my first 2 semesters, I don't think we designed anything. We wrote papers, like 5-page papers every week. And then your final paper, is like 10 to 12 or 15 pages. Journal entries and blog entries. Like every class we did a blog and we had to do write-ups. So it was a lot of writing. But it was perfect because it sets you up nicely for preparations to write your thesis. So it was great. Like at first it was like really frustrating because I just want to design something, but they really want to make sure that you understand the concepts that you're going to be delivering and understand how to communicate those through visually and written. So it was tough, but I came out a stronger writer for it. So, and then in turn a better designer because I'm able to kind of communicate a little bit better with my project. So it was worth it. So if you're thinking about going to SCAD or any graduate program, especially the MFA, it's going to be a lot of writing.
So let me ask you this. Industrial design is a lot of user experience. One of the things, the advantages of having that in your background was that you knew how to research. You understood your audience really well. I think that ends up being a huge advantage because I think sometimes we think we know what somebody is going to do, but we just don't do the research. So can you talk about that a little bit and how those things that you learned in your undergrad in industrial design play a role in your job now at AMB?
Oh yeah, definitely. So research for industrial design, we probably spend, at least in school, spent more time researching figuring out the problem. It's usually instead of a client saying design this for me, they're coming to us with a problem, and then we as the designers have to kind of develop the solution, whatever it may be. And we research everything from the user group to the materials to the cost to every little thing. So we take those same principles where we are in-house, and before we start a project, our director's always saying, you tell us the problem and we'll come up with a solution. So in doing so, whether it's a logo or a flyer or a campaign, we start with research and a mood board and rationales and all these things that are going to help support our project and pushing our concept through, and also to help the client understand. Because if we just go in and say it's this way and it's because we said so because we're the designers, that's not always going to fly. So we want to make sure that they understand why the research is important and why we're coming up with a solution that we're coming up with. So instead of just saying, here it is, we back it up with rationale, we back it up with research, we back it up with examples of what other groups are doing. So if they say, hey, what if we do this? We're like, that's cool, but it's already been done. We want to kind of push it a little bit further and, kind of make it specific to our brand. So that research really helps us kind of get that. And we have processes to, set it up. So I would encourage anybody, get a good research process. I like to start with a mood board. I'm always like looking up ideas on stuff, even if I don't have a project attached to it. And I save ideas for later. Like my Pinterest is like ridiculous. I have probably 75 boards, and then the sub boards within that. But it helps me kind of recall things that I want to kind of pull back up. So Pinterest, Evernote, notes in my phone. Just have some kind of tool to kind of keep all your ideas and your research component. You'll never know when you might need it again, but and then just knowing what kind of questions to ask. You can have a set questionnaire if you want, and kind of base it based on different projects. But just kind of have your core questions, and then kind of how you want to present, your research, with your rationales and your visuals, anything that's going to help push your idea through.
Okay, so in that, because I do think that is a differentiator for you. I don't know if that was one of the things that helped you get your job that you're at now. That was one thing you didn't give me, was your Pinterest board. So I'm going to try to look it up so that I can share that, the link for people. So you were working full-time at a university and going to school full-time, which you were taking 2 classes a semester, which they have a different semester.
Yeah, it's actually quarters.
Yeah, it was like 12 weeks, right?
Yeah, so it's a semester, basically, for us, it's 2 quarters. So
right.
Which was actually good because I kind of got through, my classes a little bit quicker. Then I did summer school and internships and stuff too. So the internship kind of prolonged the studies a little bit, but it was worth it.
So I had asked you that I thought your time management skills must be out of this world, because if you're able to do everything that you're able to do, plus do all this extra studying and writing and research on the side, what would you say was something that you really had to get down, or something maybe that you had to sacrifice during that time?
Oh, well, fortunately, when I was in school in Charlotte, a lot of my friends were in Charlotte that, I went to school with. So if I really wanted to get away, even just for a night, like go meet friends for dinner or something, it didn't really cause too much chaos. Or if I wanted to go home for a weekend. And with the way SCAD is set up, especially if you're doing classes online, you have certain check-in points. So I would try to do my check-in points between Monday and Wednesday, and then I take Thursday off, and then check back in on Friday or Saturday. So that would kind of give me 2 days that I could have, to just rest or clean up or adult or whatever else I needed to do, just so I had that good balance. But there were definitely times where if it was like a snow day and the school was closed, and everyone's like, oh, I'm going to go and play on the snow, I'm going to do this and that. And I'm like, yeah, well, when you're taking online classes, snow, it doesn't matter. As long as you have electricity, you have to do it. Right. So that was just like the discipline of it, just kind of making sure that, okay, when I come home, and I usually would get home around 6 o'clock, eat dinner, try to meal prep, to kind of, put some of that time. While I'm eating, I'm doing my reading, taking my notes, answering questions, and then I could be done by, like 10 or 10:30, which wasn't too bad because before school I was freelancing that late or even later. I did have to kind of cut out a lot of freelance, so like any extra money that was coming in, just to have, kind of got cut out. So I couldn't support my sneaker habit, buying
right,
all this other stuff. So just kind of being more mindful about spending, because that extra money wasn't coming in. But like I said, the sacrifice, they in my case were minimal in the sense of some of the other folks that were in the program who, were parents and, had husbands and wives and other family members they were taking care of. It was just me in my house. So I didn't really have anybody else that I was responsible for. So it kept it pretty flexible. So if I needed to stay up late, I could. Or if I wanted to take a nap and then get back up at 4 a.m. to do stuff, I could. I had a very flexible schedule.
So Doc asked a question about, do you struggle with having multiple places to keep all those thoughts? Like you're thinking about one thing and then you're thinking about another, or are you really like, I put it out into a notepad or put it on Evernote or put it in Pinterest and then I come back to it and you're going to come back to it and you let it go? Or
no, usually it's like, I feel like if recalling information was a mutant power, I think that would be my mutant power, because it's weird. I can recall when I placed my notes, like where I was, what I was doing, what I was listening to, and then I'll know where to go. Same with like when I'm reading a book, I recall like weird triggers that kind of help me know where I play something. Now,
Have you always had that skill?
Yeah, I think when I was little, both my brother and I, like my mom and grandmother, say you guys recall memories that we didn't think you could remember at that young. So, but I also suffer from, I can leave my bedroom, go to the kitchen, and forget what I was coming in for. But when it comes to information, it's usually a little bit better. I mean, most of the time I try to keep it strategic. Like most visuals I place on Pinterest, and then just ideas I'll try to keep in Evernote. Unless it's like a really quick idea and I just open the first thing that I can get to. But usually it's going to be in Evernote. And I try to have them categorized by, projects that I want to try, like passion projects, or if I'm thinking about a project for work, I have a notebook for that. And sometimes it might go in the wrong spot, and then I can just make a mental note to go back and put it in that correct spot later. So if I'm trying to recall it during a meeting a week later, I know exactly where it is. I'm not kind of like scrambling. But as long as I get it down, it's locked in, it's good. And then I might have to go back and just put an extra tag on it so I can like recall it. Or as long as I remember what I wrote out, I can always search for it. So that's kind of one of the beauties about this digital age. It's like easy to recall all of our stuff. You can search based on a tag or a visual note. But
so one thing Doc says was he says he struggles to remember where he put the notes in Workflowy, Evernote, Google Doc, Pinterest. So really it's about having one place that's for visual, which is Pinterest for you, and then one place that's for the ideas or the written part, and that's in Evernote. And so I would tell Doc maybe to
you have to pick. Yeah. I mean, and I've tried them all. And I just, at the end of the day, those are the two that's, were the strongest for me across platforms, from my desktop to my phone, to my tablet. So, and enough people were using it to where, I can share content. So, but I do have a sketchbook, and I have like multiple sketchbooks. It's probably actually worse for my sketchbooks because I have 3 for some reason, and I'll write something in one, and then I'll write something in another one. And then I was like, I had this really cool sketch, this really cool idea, and I'll have the wrong sketchbook. So I'm trying to get better about just sticking to one sketchbook at a time, and then trying to archive them based on year versus having 3 and then it just being kind of chaotic. So I'm doing a little bit better.
Because if you're doing 3, you're maybe trying to do it based on category or subject.
No, it's just, I just have, for some reason, I might go somewhere and I just like, a sketchbook. And I was like, this is nice. And I'll take it with, especially the little field notes.
Yeah.
And I'll just throw them in a book bag, and then I'll run to a meeting and I'll just grab the first sketchbook I can find. And then I have this journal that we got from work during this retreat. And it's a great journal. I mean, it's really nice. So I started writing stuff in there. So I'm like, okay, I got to stick to just one. So I put that one away. And then I have my one sketchbook. So I'm trying to, that's kind of one of my goals for 2019 is to, one, stop collecting so many sketchbooks. I got like 100 of them.
You'll just have to use them and then log them by date.
I've got enough. I probably got enough to last me the next, if I use every day, maybe 3 years. So I really need this.
Okay. So let me ask you this. I want you to talk a little bit about your nostalgia and your love for this, but remind us why, if you did not play sports, where did this love for, I guess, clothing or that sports, I can't even say sports aesthetic really come into being such a big part of who you are?
I think probably, I'd say my dad and my uncle. Like everybody else in my family, they're athletic or they're tall. Like my grandmother's tall.
You're taller than me.
I mean, I'm still pretty short. I'm the shortest. I'm usually the shortest. My mom ran track. My dad played football. My grandfather plays tennis and golf. Like my brother played football, wrestled. So I was surrounded by it. But I think the thing that really grasped my attention the most was uniforms and sneakers. So I dressed like I played sports, but I didn't play sports. So my dad would buy me jerseys, and like I had like this Mighty Ducks jersey, and I had like a Colorado jersey. Like I came back home from summer break with my dad with a bunch of jerseys, and my mom, I don't think she liked that very much, and then I wore a uniform in private school, so I didn't always get to wear those things, but when I did get to wear them, I was wearing my sneakers, I had like my LA Gears, I had my Air Force Ones, I had like all these shoes, so even when I wore my uniform, shoes were going to be on point, but then when I could put the whole fit together, it was just like, I'm cool. You can't tell me anything. And then we got East Bay Magazine. It's basically a sports athletic wear magazine, so shoes, uniforms, all that stuff. And I would flip through those magazines, circle all the stuff that I wanted to get. But then that's when I really started kind of sketching as far as like the fashion part of it and the gesture design. Like I would redraw the shoes and then make edits to it to say this would be my color combination. And I was doing the design before I actually knew what it was. But that's kind of where it kind of got my attention. Looking at the uniforms of different teams, looking at, logos, it was just always something that I thought was really nice. Something, it was just like, man, everybody kind of falls in love with it. And so with the, kind of transitioning to the project on nostalgia, it was how do people kind of form these bonds? Like if you see a Yankees logo, it kind of triggers, memories or these warm feelings, especially when that team is winning, or pairs a special memory with, your first experience at like a game, baseball game or a basketball game. So doing that, I wanted to kind of understand that feeling associated with sports and how I could take that into, what I'm doing now. It's like, yes, I can make the sports logos, I can do the compositing, but how do I build those emotional connections with the team? How do I kind of preserve and respect the legacy of these sports teams that I would be working with, and kind of translate that into the next story, for that team, no matter the outcome of the team, whether they're having a great season or a bad season or an okay season. How do I kind of utilize that history and those triggers of nostalgia and what makes them special and push that into, retail or billboards or communications and campaigns. So it was more so about kind of respecting the history that was there, but, kind of building on that history for, new generations and helping kind of create those special memories. But also kind of wielding the sword of nostalgia in a responsible way, because sometimes it can be fake. So, you're kind of creating these aesthetics based on just throw some grunge on it and now it's old, even though it's only 2 years old. That grunge is supposed to kind of represent something more than just a treatment. It's, supposed to be representative of history. And it's like, that's something you have to kind of earn. It can't be like forced. So that's why you want to be careful with it. So it was just, the whole idea of the project was just kind of how to be responsible with nostalgia, based on an argument that nostalgia in design can be dangerous, if it's not, if it's not real. So it was just kind of understanding like what do those feelings come from? Why do traditions in sports happen? Why do they work? Why do they not work? So I did like 4 case studies in it. It was just like a really fun project. I've never had so much fun writing a paper. And it's like, when they told me 70 something pages, for the final, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. But, by the time I finished, I think I had like 75, 80 pages. So it was like one of the coolest things I've ever, had a chance to work on. And to this day, still one of my favorite projects. And it's something that I'm still kind of trying to launch.
Yeah. I want to show some of the images just to kind of give people a little bit of your background. Oops, it did the wrong thing. Oh, boogers. Now y'all can see everything. Not trying to do that. I was trying to share just this. Okay. So this was where you grew up, right?
Yep.
And then this is Charlotte is 919 also, which is also Raleigh and
yeah. So Raleigh's 919 and Charlotte was 704.
Oh, 704. Okay, so these are your shoes. This is at NC State.
Yes. So that's stuff that I did like freelance NC State in school, and then while I was the publicity chair.
Okay, and then 704, and that's Charlotte.
Yeah.
Okay. So then this is some of the work you did for them.
Yep. So this was stuff that I did while I was with the student union. So and this is kind of what really sparked my interest in the sports design. So we collaborated with athletics on homecoming and kind of creating a brand, like a logo. They had never had an illustrated mascot, so it was like, it'd be kind of cool to illustrate Norm, for some stickers or just some T-shirts. So that was kind of cool. And then any events that would come through, from poetry nights to one of my favorite brands, Johnny Cupcakes. He came to the school, and getting to do that poster in his style and getting to meet him and have him autograph. It was just like so many opportunities. And because I was the first designer for that department, I just had so much creative freedom, and I could do, pretty much what I wanted. But so I try to utilize it as like a learning opportunity, understanding, Charlotte has brand guides, the university, different departments have brand guides, the programs have brand guides. So how to work within restraints, but then also kind of working on quicker timelines than what we had in school. And then in other cases, we knew homecoming was coming, a year or so out. So sometimes you had longer timelines on stuff. So it was just a really good experience as far as trying to see what, I could do within certain timelines versus, what I had in shorter timelines, to doing logos, to doing, full campaigns. And then also working with students for the first time. While I was there, I had maybe 5 or 6 interns in rotation. And my first boss, Lindsay, she was like, well, she managed the first ones, and then kind of as I moved up, she was like, I want you to kind of be responsible for, managing their time and what projects they're working on, and distributing projects. So I got to do a little bit of project management stuff. So it was, like I said, a really awesome first job.
So I just want to plug that you will be coming to Mobile to talk about your whole experience at our AIGA Flourish conference, which anybody can go to. There is a small amount of fee if you just want to come and hear her. But like Jason and Austin and Alan and anybody else who's here, Hannah, who's here in Mobile or around here, if you guys want to come over, we'll have it. And I'm really excited to have you down, and because now you will be the Johnny Cupcakes for our
Oh, I'm honored.
So let me keep clicking through. So then you also had this dream kind of, well, if I can't do shoes, sports or entertainment, I'd be okay with. And you got to taste a little bit of that because of what your job was through the student union, right?
Yeah, I mean, I never thought like taking a job at a university, I would get to like meet J. Cole and Wale and Chance the Rapper and Kendrick Lamar. Like they all came through to do concerts on campus. So I actually got to meet them. We worked with kind of like their marketing teams, to kind of do on-campus promotions based on, some of their branding, but kind of fuse it a little bit. So, I mean, I got to travel. I got to go to all these different design conferences for the first time. So it was just like I said, an amazing first opportunity. They provided so many experiences. I mean, even to the point where I wanted to do an internship as part of my graduate program. And, they said, well, if you want to take a leave, for the semester, save up all your vacation time. So I saved up my vacation time for about a year so that way I could go off, do the internship, but still be having like my part-time pay coming in so that I could pay my mortgage. So I moved up to New York for the summer to do an internship with Spike and Spike TV and Viacom. So that kind of helped push the sports and entertainment interest a lot more and actually build that portfolio. I think I have some pieces in there. The 212. So learning how to do compositing and building out environments, working and assisting on photo shoots to see that they don't just shoot these posters, like what you see on the left. It's like you have to build out those environments and learning how to add smoke and, treat images and do some 3D stuff. It was just, it just worked out great. And like all those opportunities kind of built up to setting the foundation for the portfolio that I would use to apply with the Falcons, and then eventually being brought into the AMB Sports and Entertainment.
But it sounds like you sacrificed. You knew you had a dream and a goal, and you were willing to sacrifice time and money, and maybe time with friends, or I mean, there's a lot of things you had to sacrifice to go to school. There's a lot of things you had to sacrifice to do an internship.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, in the end, it's like, it was just a great experience. Like, I had been to New York before, but I had never been that far away from home for that long.
All right, so I want to get back to this. I want to go through this a little bit quicker. So you definitely believe that you show the work you want to do. So in your thesis, you really kind of embrace that, and the nostalgia pieces kind of come out. So talk us through this and just tell me when to click.
So the base of the project, and a big shout out to Todd Radom. He was my thesis committee advisor on this project. And if you all don't know who he is, he's basically, like, I kind of call him one of the godfathers of sports design. He's an amazing designer and historian. So he's just a really awesome person. You should totally look him up. But he helped me kind of figure out the bones of this project, and kind of help put me in the right direction with resources and contacts with the Hall of Fame and the Negro League Museum, and just a bunch of great resources that he was willing to share with me, and kind of sit down and talk to me about this project. Him and a bunch of other really amazing designers, Bill Fredericks and TJ Harley, Frazier, Joe Bosset, they all kind of came together to kind of help me steer me in the right direction of the topics, and then also kind of a better understanding about what sports design is.
How did you meet those guys? So Todd and TJ and Fraser Davidson.
At Creative South. My first Creative South.
What was your first Creative South?
I think it was 2012 or 2013. I want to say it was 2013.
And you came with Lindsay?
No, so I came with Ade Hogue. He's a designer in Charlotte. Yeah. He was actually one of my interns, but we're almost like the same age, so he didn't really feel like but he was like my intern, like my UNC Charlotte best bud. But he was kind of my hype man all weekend, because when I would see these designers, people that I've been following and whose work I admire, I was too shy to actually talk to him. So he would be like, B, go, get up. You got to go talk to him. You got to go talk to him. Like, tell him about your project. And so they did a panel or trivia contest at the end of Creative South after they finished their presentation. And long story short, I won the trivia contest, and I got to go on stage and kind of just, I just told them, hey, I admire your work. I think you guys are great. But it was actually Ade who actually told them that I'm actually trying to get into sports design, and showed Fraser some of my work, and that's how we kind of all clicked and connected. But they've been kind of watching out for me ever since, helping with recommendations for this current job and helping with my thesis, and they're just a great group of people. So
And it does, and they're all awesome. So and Joe is like, we have a sandwich in January. So Britt is at the beginning of the sandwich and Joe is at the end. So Joe Bosack will be, so I'm excited to have two sports people this month and starting off the year right. But I really do think that there's something to be said. The industry is a lot different than when Joe started and then when you started. So let's get into that a little bit. So you have this amazing project. I am going to share the screen again, but you kind of were giving us a basis of this project, and you really created a bunch of things that you didn't have in your other in your experience. You said you wanted to learn branding, and you did. And that was something that you really pushed in yourself and in your work. And you did an awesome job with that, for sure.
Thank you.
I'm just quickly, obviously, going through it. But you didn't just do logos or branding or responsive logos. You also did a lot of other things. The bus, you did this exhibit design.
Yeah, so the whole idea was it's a traveling exhibit that would celebrate the 100th anniversary of the first Negro League World Series. So the project would actually be set in, I think I have it 2024. And the idea, after talking to Todd, he was like, let's build this as if you were actually going to, or, and I'm actually still trying to present this to, sponsors, so if we wanted to get this made, basically you would hand them this thesis and say, here it is, help me fund this.
So it was a lot of business too.
Yeah, so I actually talked to, like researching sponsors. I talked to people at Greyhound Bus because, I wanted to, the bus component was kind of a nod to how the teams traveled.
Mm-hmm.
They had to travel by bus. So that was kind of where the mobile, turning the bus into the museum kind of came from.
But even you did bus stops, like the advertising, which I thought was
so
great.
I got to do copywriting. I got to do, illustration. So I got to try a bunch of different stuff. The copywriting specific to, the location. So like take your seat in history. You're at the bus, bus stop, and you're kind of in the ballpen. You're like sitting with the players. You're on the bus, on the back of the bus, and it's like get on board. Join us at the museum. So trying to write copy specific to the locations. So that was fun. Working with type in a fun way that was a little different for me. How it paired with the logos, working with colors. The colors are pulled from the two teams, the Monarchs and Hilldale, like pulling from their colors to kind of build out the colors for that campaign. So again, like visual history from, it's all kind of being pulled from Todd and all these other sports historians and directions that he kind of helped, set me up with so that I could make it authentic, because that was part of the project was, authenticity. Not just saying, oh, this type looks cool, or these colors look cool. They're all rooted in something. And I found that if I actually start a project with research versus just sitting down to sketch a cool shape, my results are actually a lot better. So
a lot stronger, because again, it's based on. So Heather says that from AIA Utah, she said she wants to have you out there. She's going to get with her local AIGA chapter, but she said she loves how you have folded your own heritage into your lens for design, and she said you're awesome. So
it's great. Like the one specific thing I do want to call, like with the interest in the Negro League, is my uncle and my mom. They took my brother and I to a panel event at Winston-Salem State University, in my hometown, and they actually had it was like 4 or 5 players from the Negro Leagues who were from North Carolina. So actually getting to talk with these guys who played with Jackie Robinson and Josh Gibson, and like all these, like Satchel Paige, all these legends, to hear them, firsthand. I think I was like maybe 8 or 9, and then they gave us this really awesome poster that I have framed and I have hanging up in my living room. But that poster again was just something I thought was really beautiful. Like, this is really well designed. They autographed it. I've had it this whole time, but it's those little moments that kind of just spark these long-lasting interests that when you kind of look back, you can kind of say, this is what kind of this is one of the things that kind of got me into design. So props to my parents, mom and my dad, for kind of like instilling a really rich sense of history. Anything that I wasn't learning in school, I definitely was going to pick up, at home, or be encouraged to kind of not always do the reports on the same people that everybody does. As great as those figures are, in our history, my parents always reminded me that there's thousands of other people, local and international, that look like you, who've done really great things in times and eras where people didn't think they could do, amazing things. So it's like, that was kind of encouragement, not only to learn more, but, encouragement to say that, well, if they could do it, then I can do anything. If they could do it back then, I can do it right now. So that's kind of my little mantra to myself.
Yeah. Well, we didn't really get into that, but we'll have to do a part 2 or something. So I want to go back. I just want to share some more of these images, because the images are just incredible. And you really did. This was this a semester long, or or a quarter long, or was this longer?
So you get 2 defined semesters to actually work on the thesis project. So you take a class for your written thesis and then for your visual thesis. And then you present everything together at the end. So I had, before I actually started the class, I had about 6 months to kind of come up with my research plan, because you have to basically present a research plan with all of your sources. It's like at least 30 sources, your topics, your references, who's going to be on your advisory committee. Like all that has to be kind of done up front, which is actually great because that gives you more time to focus on building it out and kind of the fun part. So the first 6 months of research is actually the harder part because, you know, you're trying to vet all of your sources and, you know, extract the pieces, you know, where you want your content.
Kind of plan out where you're, and you were really, at that point in the research phase, were you thinking about pitching this, or did you pitch this after?
During the research phase, I just knew the topic that I wanted. And I kind of had the basis of the idea. But once the research started flowing, it was like that's when the idea started to come. It's like, okay, I want this to be a museum exhibit. Because I think I had gone to a museum in St. Louis while visiting my grandfather. And I was like, you know, this is really cool. I think a museum exhibit would be great. And I had done a smaller exhibit project on Gullah culture. It's another aspect of like my family history in South Carolina. And that was a museum exhibit.
Say that again? What kind of culture?
Gullah Geechee is coastal South Carolina. And so I had done a research project, an exhibit around that. So that was kind of just to kind of set up, hey, this is what goes into a museum exhibit. So I was able to take that project and kind of expand it a little bit more and then apply it to this project. So knowing that I was able to kind of take projects that I had done in the past and the research and process from there, and then just blow them up a little bit more, get a little bit more detailed. Because again, this is my thesis. This is going to determine whether I graduate or get that the MFA. So I wanted to make sure it was really, you know, done in depth, and you know, I had a good foundation. So building up, it was basically everything I had done in SCAD and all the research kind of built up. I was able to kind of say, okay, instead of starting all the way at, you know, step one, I can, you know, kind of just build up, because you know you have to do the project, like you know you have to do the thesis. So going into that second year, it's like, let me start getting in that mindset of everything I do from here on out is either going to be geared specifically to sports projects or my thesis or both. And so at the end of the day, I was able to kind of combine them both, my thesis, you know, and sports and history and all these other things that I've done, you know, put them together, and then pow, you know, I've got a project. So it all worked out. But again, you know, it's about planning, you know, and kind of realizing at the right moment, and kind of keeping yourself open and aware and conscious of how you want things to kind of fold out. And if you give yourself that extra time, usually works better. But there was a lot of stuff that came last minute, so to say, in doing the visual part, just apparel and like these access passes and kind of how I wanted the tour to go in the app. All that stuff kind of came afterwards, but I was able to kind of categorize them in these larger categories that I had set up, you know, months before. So it, like I said, it just all worked out.
So I want to ask you this question, and I'm going to show some images from Atlanta. So you get the job in Atlanta and you move straight to Atlanta. Yep. And you hadn't ever, I mean, you've probably visited Atlanta, or you've driven through going to Creative South.
Yeah, so my father has lived in Atlanta for the last like 20 plus years. So I spent summers down here. So it was like, and the funny thing is, I actually told myself I would never move to Atlanta because everybody was moving to Atlanta. Atlanta and Charlotte were like places where people seem to move,
right?
At least from North Carolina after graduation. So I said, I'm never going to move to Atlanta. The traffic is terrible.
It's terrible.
I just can't deal with it. But when I was in Chicago for a conference, and my current boss, Michael Benford, he was there as well, and another designer that I met at Creative South, Adam Martin, he runs a podcast. Maybe
he's been on, yeah.
And so he connected us. He's like, "Hey, you two are there. You know, you should link up." So Benford was actually hiring at the time, and I wasn't really looking for a job, but I was like, you know, at least I can connect with them. And so when he told me, you know, they're looking to expand their team, you know, I was like, okay, you know, I could at least, you know, check it out. And so I had to go to my design counselor, Todd, And I actually called him before I called my mom, because I knew if I called my mom first, she would probably want me to stay in North Carolina. She wouldn't keep me from moving.
Right.
You know, she's always really supportive, but I knew Todd was going to give me that design professional insight, and what's the good, what's the bad, kind of help me weigh the options. And he was like, this would be a great move, to get a job with a professional team this way. It's almost kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity. So he said, if you feel comfortable, you should definitely do it. So I went through, kind of linked up with Benford, kind of showed him some of my work. He said, this is good. If you're interested, definitely, like for you to apply. So I was like, okay. So once I got back from Chicago, I applied, and I kind of reached out to some of my sports design friends to kind of see, would you mind being a reference for me? And it kind of going back to when you're networking with people, like when I first met them, I just kind of introduced myself. I didn't ask for anything.
Right.
So for a lot of students, because it happens to me, when you do meet with design professionals or professionals in any sense that could be recommendations, don't like flat out just, hey, can you be a reference for me, or can you do this for me? Can you do that? Like, kind of build the relationship first before just jumping in and asking. So that's just like a small thing. So we had that kind of relationship already, to where I felt comfortable saying, hey, I'm trying to get this job, would you mind writing a recommendation for me? And they did, it was no problem. So I ended up getting the job.
You were also keeping them, a part of, and you were sharing the stuff that you were doing in grad school, the stuff that you were doing at Charlotte. It's not like you met them at Creative South and never talked to them again.
We stayed constant contact.
So, but it's like, what did those pieces look like? And to me, those pieces look like consistently being on social media, sharing your work, sharing your project.
Twitter and Instagram probably, and it's why I don't really, even though I really should have a website, I don't utilize my website. I pretty much just do everything through social, and communicating and connecting, through social. Like TJ and I, even if, we don't have a project or anything we're working on together, we might just meet up for lunch, or with Todd, every once in a while we just Skype. So I don't just see them at conferences. I can check in with them, even if it's just an email or a text. That's what it's all about. But
they were seeing your work is what, it wasn't like, it is really, I completely agree, but it sounds like connections. If I'm listening to your whole story, your mom and dad really connected you with people, even in high school, to get you to maybe the next step. And then you really did that. A day helped you, really push you. So
it's funny. It's like, cause then like I said, I still got to stay in contact with those. Like Ade and I text each other all the time, whether it be about design or be quotes. It's just keeping contact, about design informally. Just, you want to keep those relationships alive. Interacting with each other on social, like commenting on their work. Oh man, this looks amazing. I can't wait to see the rest of it. Or, hey, can you check this project out for me? What do you think, real quick? So little stuff like that. It doesn't have to be super, super formal, but just checking in, letting them know that you're still there and you still value that input in that relationship.
So I want you to answer at least this one question. So what about, because these I think are two that I kind of prefaced in the beginning, and I don't want to let you go until you get these out. So can you describe your role as a woman in the sports and entertainment industry, mainly the sports one, because I think maybe there are more designers in the entertainment. And do you think that was a barrier to entry?
No, I definitely, at least for me, I didn't really have any barriers. I know, like, I had applied at another agency, sports agency, around the same time. I was applying with the Falcons, and it was all guys, all on the team. But they kept kind of bringing up the fact, like, would I be comfortable? I was like, I mean, I'm a designer, yeah. And it almost didn't click for me, what he was referring to. And I was like, well, as long as I can do the job, I'm fine. And even, being on at the Falcons up until recently, I was the only woman on the team. And now, we have Kayla who's there. So it's like, I was fine before, but it's like, it does feel good just to kind of have someone to kind of relate to, not so much about design stuff, but just like life stuff.
Right.
Team. But for me, I've always been conscious of it, but as long as I kind of go in and, give my best,
Mm-hmm.
show that I belong here, then, I no barriers. Like, we always kind of say, like, when we're doing portfolios and we're looking at portfolios, we just want to know that you can do the work, no matter your background, no matter what
Right.
school you went to, just show that you're passionate, you're dedicated, and, that you can do the work. And I know that's not the case for everybody. I've just been fortunate and, really blessed to just have a journey into this industry that wasn't met with, a lot of opposition, even though, I get a lot of questions about it from the outside. It's really not,
It
it wasn't as
really,
bad for me.
it
But
just required you taking the step and asking questions and trying.
yeah,
It's kind of like they didn't know that there weren't any girls there, you
yeah,
know?
but like, again, if I didn't say that, it wasn't on my mind, it's like, because, I think anytime, for me as a minority going into something, I'm always conscious that, we have this phrase, we have to be, 10 times as good, just to
Right.
make sure that we kind of get in the door. But at the end of the day, for me, it was just about doing the best that I could do, showing that I deserve to be there. And I said, even if I was in a situation where someone saw me and it's like, hey, we're going to bring you into it. Because I've actually had people say to me, not on this team, but other potential teams, say, oh, you're a really talented designer. And, we want, diversity on our team. And I was like, I didn't know if he was saying he wants me on his team because I'm a good designer, or I would be like, this token, like, I don't want to
Mm.
be, the token. I had to be careful about that mindset. And then also careful about, am I reading too much into this,
Mm.
or, am I gonna risk not getting something because, I'm gonna let my brain overthink the situation. But
Mm.
it's just something we're always kind of conscious of. But that's kind of why I'm trying to do better about, accepting speaking invitations and doing, podcasts and shows like this to show that we are out there. And so going to like MLC, I connected with
What?
so
So
many
MLC is the sports design
sports
conference,
design
right?
conference, and going there this past summer in Chicago, and kind of just seeing how much more diverse it's
Mm.
become, is just great, especially with people that look like me. It was like a whole squad. It was just great. And it's that insight, that you can provide, from different perspectives. I think that's why that value in diversity, especially with different social things and social justice issues kind of going on
Mm.
within sports, and then, the world at large. But bringing those perspectives in and having that dialogue and providing that insight on all different sides, I think is great. It's really valuable, and as our team gets bigger, we have people from all over, different backgrounds as far as their education and how they kind of got into design. And having that insight when we're doing a project is just great. We can provide that cultural insight. We can provide insight based on different generations and our ages, and how it's going to impact the projects that we present, and how we present copy and taglines and all these different things. So that's why I kind of really value diversity, but then also encouraging people to kind of, if you have a platform or an opportunity to speak or present or just show yourself, do it. I used to hide
Right.
behind just a fake picture or a logo, and
Mm.
I didn't really understand the value of, showing the world who I was, till years later, when you actually have someone send you a message after you present at a conference and they say, I never really connected with a designer that looked like me, or,
Mm.
a female designer, or, a designer that's a person of color. It's like, you're like, wow, I didn't really think it
That it
was
was making as much of an impact because,
impact. So,
right.
so it's like, and then even in this time, it's 2019, it's still, it's still important. We have some ways to go, but I think it's definitely, we're moving forward. We still just got a long ways to, we got some ways to go, but
But you had told me a story. One thing you said during our pre-talk was, you said this quote, which I wrote down because I thought it was really good. Our capability doesn't reside in our gender, which I think is it's the same thing. Our capability doesn't reside in our skin color either. But then you really, attending that conference, you could really see a difference in the industry in 3 years, meaning you saw more women and you saw more minorities at the sports design conference
yep.
in only 3 years. Can you kind of talk just a little bit about that, and then we'll let everybody go?
No, I mean it's funny. It's almost like when you see somebody in Atlanta wearing like an NC State shirt, you just get really excited because you know that by them wearing that NC State shirt, you have some kind of shared connection or
Mm-hmm.
experience, you know. And I think it was the same with seeing, you know, a group of um, Black women designers and you know, Black designers, and just kind of our shared experience, be it the positive stuff or, you know, the bad stuff. It's you just kind of link instantly, and you kind of feel, you know, this extra level of support. But then you're kind of at this sport design conference, so you have that other, you know, shared experience of all being sports designers for in-house teams, be it collegiate or professional. So at that same level, it's like you kind of embrace each other because you know you have a unique shared
Mm-hmm.
experience, and they're going to understand you. So that's kind of you know, what it's about. And you know, it's just kind of nice to see more super talented people, you know, being elevated and given opportunities, you know, based on their work. And they, you know, whether they're people of color, whether they're, you know, from a dominant field, you know, whether they're male, female, it's just going to be great for the industry overall, and the stories that we tell and how we present sports and how we communicate with, you know, the players, you know. So from what's on the field to the front office, you know, what creatives are doing, you know, we're seeing all these different shifts. And at the end, you know, I think it's going to have a really positive impact on how we tell our stories, and, you know, what we're trying to communicate, and hopefully bring some people together. Um, but it's just amazing to kind of see that growth and that change. So um, I'm excited to see more. I get hit up in my inbox all the time with a bunch of different people, like from all walks of life, saying, "Hey, I want to do what you're doing." And you're like, "Wow, this is how I would kind of approach Todd and TJ and all these guys." Like now you have people, kind of the cycles kind of continuing, this new kind of
Mm-hmm.
wave of design leaders and designers and professionals kind of coming up, and this wave of younger designers kind of coming in and kind of reaching out. So, you know, I'm honored that, you know, people see enough of me or think enough of me to reach out.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's nice. It's like wow, you know, someone saw my work and they want to do it. Like that's an honor. Like because that
But
was me.
you've worked really hard. I mean, you really like it. It's not like anybody. It's not like, oh, I'm interested in it and I did it for school. Like you really put in the time to get so much better, and you researched, and that 75-page paper you had to do turned into bigger than 75 pages. But it was because you love something, and you also found these passion projects, and you still have passion projects that you do now. And there are things with the Falcons that you and I talked about that we'll have to do a part two on, that you told me about, like the fan day experience. And there's all different kinds of things that you still sacrifice, but you love design, so it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. But I feel like sometimes, no matter what gender or what color anybody is, some people just don't have that passion, and some people don't have that drive.
Yeah, and I think too, it's I think collectively as designers, I think it's gonna be up to us to kind of constantly communicate like what design is. You know, I've had I got to actually the same design camp I attended as a student. I got to be a teaching assistant for, and you had a lot of kids who would come in who were super talented, super enthusiastic about design, and you had, you know, some who were there because they were like, well, I'm not good at math or science or English or that. And my parents said I should just be a designer. And then you're like, well, we're good at all that stuff too. You know, like college design, we had like the highest average GPA of incoming students and just overall. So we're like, we're smart too. Like you know,
It's not the easy
it's not as
choice.
easy as, you know, as people, you know, kind of assume it is. You know, they're like, well, I can't draw, but I can use a computer, so I'll just learn Photoshop. And it's like, no, it's not. That's not what it is. And I've actually had people who've inboxed me, and I kind of tell them that, and it's almost like they're shocked because they were able to get into a program and they're trying to get internships and jobs, and you know, no one's biting. You know, no one's getting their portfolio. And I look at the work and I kind of tell them, well, maybe you should try this, maybe you should do that. And they're like, man, I have to do all of that. I'm like, well, yeah, like you want a job, right? You know, you have to do more than just
Mm.
put out a link, you know, to your portfolio. You know, people want to understand that you know what it is, whether you went to school or not. You have to understand what the industry is about. So sometimes they come back and say, okay, I really want to do this. And other times they're just like, I never hear from them again. So, hopefully they figured it out. But it's not as easy as people kind of just think it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Or as easy to get a job in those really. So if Nike came back to you today, I know this wasn't on your thing, so if you don't want to answer this question, you don't have to. But if Nike came back and was like, "Oh my goodness, Britt, we want you to work there," would you go back and do industrial design and work for Nike?
It's hard now. Because if it was like maybe 4 years ago, definitely. It's like now I have a nephew who's like almost 2, and I don't want to live on the other side of the country and not be able to get to him, if I want to drive before his birthday or, stuff like that, or the holidays. But I mean, I think where I am now, because, with the NFL is linked to Nike, our soccer team is linked to Adidas. I'm sure there'll be opportunities to like learn from folks at that industry. And I know people who've worked there. So the insight that I kind of would have liked to have by working there, I can get it based on talking to people that work there. So it's like
more connections.
It's more connections. And it's like I get that insight, I could do, freelance probably if I wanted to with them if there was no like, real conflict of interest. But it's like where I am now presents so many unique opportunities across, 2 really amazing sports, an amazing stadium. It's like, it's in Atlanta. It's like, the perfect location for me. It's like, I'm happy,
Yeah.
I'm older now. I'm like, I'm 31. So trying to move across the country, I don't know if I can do it.
It's harder. Yeah.
It's harder to move. I mean, I keep saying I'm going to move and, to a bigger place here. I'm like,
you live where I grew up.
No Nike. She doesn't want me to go to work.
You live in Dunwoody where I grew up. So it's a good place.
Yeah, the train, it's like easy access. My family can access it. Like it's right off the highway. So
yeah, and it's pretty safe.
Yeah, it's safe. It's really, I really like it. I've been here, like I said, since I moved here, same spot. My apartment, people, they're nice. So it's like, I'm in a good spot. I mean, I got a good view. It's all good.
Well, Britt, thank you so much. Thank you so much for today. Thank you for starting the new year. And Ashley was like, Diane, I saw the post. It was supposed to be her show's on the 9th. I was like, oh no, really? Anyway, so thank you I really was excited just to start the new year off with you. And David's in Seattle. I believe Nike's in Seattle, right? Or Portland?
Portland, they're in Oregon. Mm-hmm.
With Patricia. So Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year to you, Britt. Thank you. Really are. I will have to schedule the rest of these questions because there was just so much more stuff I'd like to get into. But I want to share people how to get in touch with you. So you can follow her on Behance at behance.net/Britt with 2 T's Davis, BrittDavis. Super easy. On Instagram, it's Britt Davis 704. Because you're connected to Charlotte? Yep. Okay. And then Twitter, Britt Davis 704. Dribble with 3 B's, Britt Davis 704. Not 3 B's on the Britt, just on the dribble.
On dribble.
And then your Pinterest is also Britt Davis 704. So I've shared all those. Those will all be in the write-up in the show notes, as well as a link to Evernote and to Todd Radin. So you guys can check him out as well. Thank you guys. I want to make sure you guys know that we have now we have 3 affiliates you can click on. Our good friend Brian White, who comes all the time, he introduced me to this plugin called Elementor, and I'll share the link with you. But if you want to go get it, this has revolutionized. I love the Divi. I still use the Divi theme, but then Elementor is just a very easy drag and drop. But I didn't have to do any code. There was it wrote the code for me, and it made it so easy. Like for Britt, I know you don't have a website right now, but this made it so easy. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I actually did a project within about 10 days, a whole website. So to me, that's really good. So I am trying in 2 weeks, not next week's just a rapid recharge. And then we have, Adam Grayson on not the 9th, but the next week. By then, I'm hoping, we do have school starting and I have a lot of other things going on, but I'm hoping that I can get the Recharging You site redone in that amount of time with the Elementor plugin. So if you guys want that, you can always get it on bit.ly/dr/Elementor. And I get a tiny, not a tiny, but I get a little bit of the cut. You don't have to do anything. And then it doesn't, I mean, you have to pay for it, but you don't have to pay anymore. I just get a cut of their profits, I guess. And then you can always support me on, oh, cool. I'm glad, Lorenzo. That's awesome. The Patreon, sorry, when I try to read and talk, it's very bad. Patreon.com/Diane Gibbs. And then you can also do the Divvy. The Divvy is my favorite theme. I get the lifetime membership. I love lifetime memberships because then you don't have to pay for it every year, which I really like. You can get that with bit.ly/Diane Loves Divvy, and that's DIVI. And then I love Audible books. You can try Audible and get 2 free books at bit.ly/Design Recharge. That one's the easiest.
I love Audible.
Me too. I mean, really, for $14.95 a month, I get a new book and some books are like $30.
Yeah, so, it's great to listen. I like to listen. Atlanta Traffic and
yes,
it's great. So,
oh my goodness. One time, living in Dunwoody, I worked at the Weather Channel and the Travel Channel one summer. That was my internship. It took me 3.5 hours to get home. I mean, I could have finished a whole book in that time. So had Audible been around then, especially for people in traffic, it really does take your road rage down, because I don't want to finish the book sometimes.
Exactly.
So it makes it a lot better. So anybody dealing with road rage should get Audible. You should try this link and you'll get 2 free books. So thank you guys. Thank you, Britt, for everything. And I'm super excited that you're going to get to come to Mobile, and I'll get to hopefully see you in Creative South again.
Yep, got my ticket. I'll be there.
Okay, good. Well, I'm sure I'll have some students that maybe you'll get to meet at Flourish, and then hopefully you'll get to see again. Anyway, thank you. Thank you, guys. And we'll see you next week, just me and you, and we'll talk about resolutions. Did you make any resolutions, Britt?
Screen time, getting up earlier, drink more water.
Those are all good. Well, we'll see you guys next week.